The snow fell gently on the barren landscape of Keldis as Eliza Munro adjusted her thermal suit for the 5th time that morning. The wind howled across the frozen plains, making the already difficult excavation even more challenging. As chief archaeologist for the Consortium Mining Guild, Eliza had seen her share of strange discoveries, but nothing had prepared her for what lay beneath the ice and rock of this remote outer rim planet. "Dr. Munro, you need to see this," called out Greg Bailey, her assistant, his voice crackling through the comm system. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with poorly contained excitement. Eliza made her way across the dig site, careful not to slip on the icy surface. The team had been excavating for nearly 3 months, initially searching for rare minerals. What they found instead had changed the focus of their mission entirely. "We've cleared away the last ice layer," Greg said, pointing to the massive metal structure now visible in the excavation pit. "The ship's hull is fully exposed." Eliza stared in awe at what lay before them. The ship was enormous, easily 2 kilometers in length, with a sleek design that spoke of advanced engineering beyond anything currently known in the galaxy. Its dark hull absorbed the light rather than reflected it, making it look like a tear in reality against the white snow. "Any progress on dating the find?" Eliza asked, her breath visible in the freezing air. Greg handed her a data pad. "Preliminary scans suggest it's been here for approximately 20,000 years. The material composition doesn't match anything in our database, but the design is unmistakably human." Eliza felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Humans were the stuff of legends now, a species that had once dominated half the galaxy before vanishing mysteriously. Some said they had been wiped out in a great war. Others believed they had simply left the galaxy altogether. Whatever the truth, no living person had seen a human in 20 millennia. "Have you informed Consortium Central?" she asked. Greg nodded. "They're sending a research team. Should be here within the week. They've classified this as priority level 1. Eliza turned back to the ship. Despite being buried for thousands of years, its hull showed remarkably little damage or corrosion. The metal, if it was metal at all, seemed to have properties that defied time itself. "Let's continue scanning the interior," she said. "I want to know what's inside before the Consortium bureaucrats arrive and take over." For the next 3 days, Eliza and her team worked tirelessly, using advanced scanning equipment to map the ship's interior without breaching its hull. The results were fascinating. The vessel appeared to be a warship of incredible power, with weapon systems that dwarfed even the most advanced Consortium dreadnoughts. The design was elegant yet practical, clearly built for both speed and combat. "Dr. Munro, we're detecting something unusual in Section C7, said Linda Powell, their scanning technician. "There appears to be an active power source." Eliza looked over Linda's shoulder at the readings. "After 20,000 years? That's impossible." "The readings are clear," Linda insisted. "Whatever power system this ship uses, it's still functioning at a minimal level. And there's more. We're detecting life support systems active in several compartments." The implications were staggering. If systems were still active after all this time, the technology was far beyond current understanding. But why would life support be active in an abandoned ship? "We need to find a way inside," Eliza decided. "Greg, assemble a team. We'll use the laser cutters to create an entry point near the active sections." It took another full day to cut through the strange metal of the hull. The material seemed to resist their tools, almost as if it were repairing itself as they cut. Finally, they created an opening large enough for a person to pass through. Eliza insisted on being the first to enter. Dressed in a full environmental suit with oxygen supply, she stepped through the breach and into the ancient vessel. The interior was dark, but as soon as her boots touched the floor, soft lights began to activate along the corridors. "The ship is responding to my presence," she reported back to her team. "Lighting systems are coming online automatically." The air inside was stale but breathable according to her suit's sensors. After confirming it was safe, she removed her helmet, becoming the first person in 20,000 years to breathe the air inside a human vessel. The corridors were wide and practical, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Strange symbols marked the walls, presumably in an ancient human language. Eliza recognized some from historical archives, but many were unknown to her. Following the power readings, she made her way deeper into the ship. The vessel was a maze of corridors and chambers, many filled with technology she couldn't begin to understand. What struck her most was the size of everything. Doorways, seats, control panels, all designed for beings of roughly her own height and build. It was a stark reminder that despite the legendary status humans had acquired, they were physically similar to many current galactic species. After nearly an hour of exploration, she reached a sealed door marked with red symbols. Unlike the other doors that had opened automatically at her approach, this one remained firmly shut. "I've reached what appears to be a secured area," she reported back. "The door is sealed and won't respond to proximity." "Be careful, Dr. Monroe," Greg warned through the comm. The consortium instructions were clear about not activating any systems. Eliza studied the door panel. Next to it was what appeared to be a hand scanner. Acting on instinct, she placed her palm against it. To her surprise, the panel lit up, scanning her hand. A mechanical voice spoke in an unknown language, followed by a series of beeps. Then, in a language she could understand, "Genetic profile not recognized. Emergency protocol activated. Stand by for manual override." The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a chamber bathed in blue light. Inside were rows of transparent pods, each connected to complex machinery. Most of the pods were empty, their glass surfaces shattered or contents long decayed. But one pod at the center of the room remained intact, its systems humming softly. Eliza approached it cautiously. Inside, floating in some kind of clear liquid, was a human man. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, with short brown hair and a strong jaw. He wore a dark uniform with insignia she didn't recognize. Most importantly, he showed no signs of decay. If the pod's readings were to be believed, he was alive in some form of suspended animation. "Greg," she whispered into her comm, "you need to see this. I've found a survivor." Within hours, the chamber was filled with Eliza's team, all staring in disbelief at the man in the pod. According to the ship's computer, which had gradually activated more systems since Eliza's entry, the man was Commander Alan Wright of the United Human Ship Vanguard. "The pod's keeping him in stasis," explained Ben Russo, their medical expert, after examining the systems. "It's some kind of suspended animation technology. His biological processes are slowed to near zero, but he's definitely alive." "Can we wake him?" Eliza asked. Ben shook his head. "Not without understanding this technology better. We could kill him if we try." The debate was cut short by the arrival of the consortium research vessel. Within days, the site was swarming with officials, scientists, and security personnel. The discovery of a living human after 20,000 years was unprecedented, and the political implications were enormous. Dr. Henry Grant, the consortium's leading xenobiologist, took charge of studying Commander Wright and the stasis technology. Eliza was allowed to continue her archaeological work on the ship itself, though now under strict supervision. As she cataloged artifacts and studied the ship's layout, Eliza couldn't help but wonder about the man frozen in time. What world had he come from? What had happened to human civilization? And perhaps most importantly, what would he think of the galaxy he would wake up to 20,000 years after his time? The answers would come sooner than anyone expected, and they would shake the foundations of the galaxy. The consortium research base established around the ancient warship buzzed with activity as scientists from a dozen different species worked to unlock the secrets of human technology. At the center of it all was the stasis chamber containing Commander Alan Wright, now moved to a specialized medical facility constructed alongside the ship. Dr. Henry Grant stood before the stasis pod, carefully reviewing the data on his tablet. As the foremost xenobiologist in the consortium, he had been studying extinct species for over 40 years. But never had he encountered a living specimen from a civilization 20,000 years gone. "The stasis technology is remarkable," he said to Eliza Monroe, who had been allowed to observe the revival process. "It slowed his cellular decay to almost nothing. According to our scans, biologically he's only aged a few hours since entering the pod. Can you wake him safely?" Eliza asked, her eyes fixed on the sleeping man. Henry nodded slowly. "We believe so. We've deciphered enough of the pod's control systems to understand the revival protocol. The process should take approximately 12 hours. The revival began with a subtle change in the clear fluid surrounding Commander Wright. Its color shifted from blue to pale green as its composition altered. The man's vital signs, displayed on monitors throughout the lab, began to increase gradually from their near-frozen state. "His metabolism is activating," Henry observed, brain activity increasing. "So far, everything is proceeding as expected." For the next 10 hours, the team watched as Alan Wright slowly returned to life. The fluid in the pod drained away inch by inch, while medical systems administered carefully calibrated drugs to help his body transition from stasis. Finally, as the last of the fluid disappeared, his eyes flickered beneath closed lids. "He's entering REM sleep," Henry said. "A good sign. His brain is beginning to process again." An hour later, as the entire research team held their breath, Commander Alan Wright opened his eyes for the first time in 20,000 years. His gaze was unfocused at first, then sharpened as he took in his surroundings. His expression showed confusion, then alarm. He tried to sit up but found himself too weak. "Easy, Commander," Henry said in a calm voice. "You're safe, but your body needs time to adjust." Wright's eyes fixed on Henry, widening slightly at the sight of the xenobiologist's distinctly non-human features. He said something in a language none of them understood. "The translation systems aren't working," Eliza whispered. His dialect must be too different from the recorded human languages. For the next week, communication was limited to gestures and simple drawings as Wright recovered his strength, and the linguistics team worked to build a translation program. The commander proved to be a quick study, working diligently to learn the current galactic standard language even as the researchers learned his. Finally, 2 weeks after his awakening, Alan Wright sat across from Eliza and Henry in the base's conference room. "Now able to communicate through a translation device, how long?" he asked, his voice steady despite the weight of the question. Henry and Eliza exchanged glances before she answered. "The ship and you inside it have been in stasis for approximately 20,000 years, Commander Wright." Wright closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the information. When he opened them again, they held a steely resolve. The emergency protocols were never meant to last that long. 500 years, perhaps 1,000 at most. His hands tightened on the edge of the table. "The others? The rest of my crew?" "We've found no other intact stasis pods," Henry said gently, "though there are many compartments of the ship we haven't fully explored yet." Wright nodded once, then stood abruptly. "I need to access the Vanguard's main computer. Now." Despite the consortium security team's concerns, Wright was escorted back to the ship the following day. As he approached the main bridge, the ship's systems sprang to life more completely than they had for any of the researchers. Doors that had remained sealed now opened automatically. Screens that had been dark lit up with information. The ship recognizes him, Eliza realized. It must have some form of genetic or neural identification system. At the bridge, Wright placed his hand on the central command console. A holographic display appeared above it, showing the ship's status. He studied it intently, his expression growing more grave with each passing moment. "The emergency systems held," he said finally. "Barely, but they held." He turned to Eliza and Henry. "I need to show you something." With swift, practiced movements, Wright navigated through the ship's computer systems. A new hologram appeared showing a three-dimensional map of a massive ship, the Vanguard, with certain sections highlighted in red. "These are the crew stasis chambers," Wright explained. "There were originally 1,200 of us aboard when the Vanguard engaged its emergency protocols. According to this, only 217 stasis pods are still functional." The implication stunned the research team. Not one human, but potentially hundreds had survived the passage of 20 millennia. "Commander," Eliza said carefully, "what exactly was the Vanguard's mission? Why were you placed in stasis?" Wright's face darkened. "The Vanguard was humanity's last hope. We weren't just a warship. We were an ark, carrying the best of our military, our scientists, our engineers." He paused, his gaze distant. "Earth was already gone. Most of our colonies, too. We were losing the war." "War?" Henry asked. "Against whom?" "We called them the Void Heralds," Wright replied. "They came from beyond the galaxy's edge. Nothing like them had ever been encountered before. They weren't interested in conquest or resources in the traditional sense. They harvested life itself, all life, from every world they touched." He brought up another display, showing strange biomechanical constructs that seemed to defy conventional physics. Our weapons were effective against them, but they adapted quickly, and there were always more of them. The Vanguard was our final strategy. A ship with our most advanced technology and a select crew, placed in stasis until the Herald threat had passed. Then we would emerge and rebuild. Eliza and Henry exchanged troubled glances. No historical records mentioned such a threat, but then again, much of humanity's history had been lost to time. Commander Wright, Henry said carefully, in the 20,000 years since your ship entered stasis, there have been no encounters with these void heralds. Perhaps they were defeated after all or left the galaxy. Wright shook his head. Or perhaps they went dormant just as we did. He turned back to the console. I need to revive my crew, starting with my senior officers. They need to know what's happened. The Consortium Council, when informed of Wright's request, was divided. Some members saw the revival of more humans as a potential threat to galactic stability. Others were eager to learn from these living relics of a legendary civilization. In the end, a compromise was reached. Wright would be allowed to revive 5 of his senior officers, while the Consortium continued to study the Vanguard's technology. The first to be awakened was Lieutenant Olivia Parker, the ship's chief engineer. Unlike Wright's revival, which had been a cautious, weeks-long process, Parker's awakening was swift and efficient under the commander's guidance. Within days, she was up and working alongside Wright to assess the Vanguard's systems. The good news is that the ship's core systems are intact, she reported after a thorough inspection. The bad news is that after 20,000 years, even our technology has deteriorated somewhat. The main power core is operating at less than 30% capacity. Can it be restored? Wright asked. Parker nodded confidently. Given time and resources, yes. The Vanguard was designed to be self-repairing and self-sustaining. We just need to jumpstart certain processes. As the 2 humans worked to revive their ancient vessel, news of their existence spread throughout the Consortium worlds. For most species, humans were merely legends from the distant past. Now those legends had come to life, and the galaxy watched with a mixture of fascination and fear to see what would happen next. News of the humans' revival spread quickly across Consortium space, causing both excitement and alarm among the various species. The Consortium Council called an emergency session to address what many were now calling the human situation. Representatives from 17 major species gathered in the Great Circular Chamber on Nexus Prime, the administrative heart of galactic civilization. Counselor Vex of the Iraqi species, their blue scales gleaming under the chamber lights, spoke first. These humans possess technology far beyond our own, and now they're reactivating their warship. We must consider the security implications. The humans have shown no hostility, countered Counselor Jem, a tall, willowy Solari. They've cooperated fully with our research teams. For now, Vex replied. But what happens when they learn that many of their former worlds are now inhabited by our peoples? The Iraqi alone have 7 colonies on what were once human territories. The debate continued for hours until Council Leader Thorne, an elder of the Reptilian Corps, raised his hand for silence. We will send a diplomatic envoy to negotiate directly with these humans. Samantha Lewis will represent the Consortium's interests. Samantha Lewis was one of the most respected diplomats in the Consortium, known for her skill in handling delicate situations. She arrived at the research base 3 days later, just as Commander Wright and Lieutenant Parker were supervising the revival of 3 more crew members, Dr. Frank Nelson, the ship's medical officer, Security Chief Carol Reed, and Navigation Officer Peter Reeves. The initial meeting between Lewis and the humans took place in a neutral conference room adjacent to the Vanguard. Lewis was struck by how ordinary the humans appeared. They looked similar to several humanoid species in the Consortium, though their mannerisms and expressions were distinctly their own. Commander Wright, Lewis began, I represent the Galactic Consortium, the governing body that maintains peace and order among the 17 major species of this galaxy. We wish to establish a formal dialogue with you and your people. Wright nodded respectfully. We appreciate that, Ms. Lewis. We find ourselves strangers in a time far removed from our own. Dialogue is exactly what we need. The conversation started well, with Lewis explaining the current political landscape of the galaxy and Wright sharing information about human history. The mood shifted, however, when Lewis brought up the matter of the Vanguard itself. The Consortium Council has concerns about the reactivation of your vessel, she said carefully. Its weapon systems alone could destabilize the current balance of power. The Vanguard remains sovereign human territory, Wright replied firmly. We have no hostile intentions toward the Consortium or its members, but we will not surrender our ship or its technology. Lewis changed tactics. Perhaps we could discuss integration options for you and your crew. The consortium could provide a suitable planet. Our priority is reviving our remaining crew members, Wright interrupted. After that, we'll consider our long-term plans. But know this: humanity survived for a reason. The Vanguard's mission isn't complete. The diplomatic talks continued over several days, making little progress. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Parker made a significant discovery while examining the Vanguard's long-range sensor logs. "Commander," she said, her face grave as she showed Wright the data. "The sensors have been passively collecting data even in stasis mode. Look at these readings from the galactic rim." Wright studied the display, his expression darkening. Energy signatures similar to Void Herald technology, faint but growing stronger over the past century. He looked up at Parker. "They're waking up just as we are. This information changed everything." Wright called for an emergency meeting with Lewis and the consortium representatives. "There's something you need to know," he told them. "The enemy we were fighting, the reason the Vanguard was placed in stasis, they may still exist. We're detecting signs of their technology at the galaxy's edge." Lewis looked skeptical. "Commander, there have been no reports of any such threat in our recorded history." "Because they've been dormant, just as we were," Wright explained. "The Void Heralds aren't like any enemy you've encountered. They don't want territory or resources. They consume all life they encounter, breaking it down to its component parts to fuel their growth." He showed them the sensor data, explaining the patterns that matched known Herald behavior. The consortium, scientists examined the information with growing concern. "If what you're saying is true," Lewis said slowly, "this threatens all species, not just humans." "Exactly," Wright agreed. "Which is why we need to accelerate the revival of our crew and the restoration of the Vanguard. Our ship was specifically designed to combat this threat." The revelation about the potential return of the Void Heralds changed the dynamic of the negotiations. Lewis returned to the Consortium Council with Wright's warning and a new proposal, a cooperative effort to investigate the possible threat. With the humans providing their expertise and technology, the Council remained divided. Some dismissed the Void Herald threat as an elaborate ploy by the humans to maintain control of their warship. Others took the warning seriously, especially after their own long-range probes confirmed unusual energy readings from the galactic rim. While the politicians debated, Wright and his now expanded crew of 12 revived humans worked tirelessly to restore the Vanguard systems. Lieutenant Parker focused on the ship's power core, a marvel of engineering that drew energy from multiple dimensions. "The core is stabilizing," she reported after weeks of work. "We're up to 45% capacity and climbing. Another month, maybe 2, and we could have main propulsion online." Dr. Nelson, meanwhile, had been studying the remaining stasis pods. "Most of the survivors are in stable condition, but the revival process will need to be carefully managed. Some of the pods are showing signs of degradation. We can't wait too long." Security Chief Reed had a different concern. "Our weapons systems are advanced, but 20,000 years is a long time. The Heralds will have evolved. We need to update our tactical systems with current data." Commander Wright took all this information in stride, but privately he was troubled. The humans were effectively alone in this time, surrounded by species who viewed them with suspicion. Their only real leverage was the Vanguard itself, and the knowledge it contained. If the consortium decided to take the ship by force, there was little his small crew could do to stop them. His concerns were justified. On the Consortium Council, a faction led by Counselor Vex was pushing for immediate action. "These humans and their ship represent both an opportunity and a threat," Vex argued. "We should place them under protective custody and study their technology under controlled conditions." The motion was gaining support when an urgent message interrupted the council session. 3 consortium colonies in the outer systems had gone silent. All communication suddenly ceased. Investigation teams sent to the first colony found a chilling scene. An entire settlement empty, no bodies, no signs of battle, just an eerie absence where a thriving community had once existed. The same pattern was discovered at the second and third colonies, Millions of beings simply gone. When Wright saw the reports, he recognized the pattern immediately. "This is how it began last time," he told Lewis during an emergency meeting. "The heralds don't leave evidence of their attacks. They take everything, every living organism, every scrap of organic material." Lewis, now convinced of the threat, became an advocate for the humans on the council. "The Void Heralds are real, and they're here now," she told the assembled representatives. "The humans have fought this enemy before. We need their help." The debate was cut short when the first Herald vessels appeared at the edge of consortium space. Massive biomechanical constructs that seemed to blend organic and mechanical components in ways that defied conventional understanding. Conventional consortium defenses proved ineffective against their strange technology. In this moment of crisis, Wright made his offer: the Vanguard and its technology in defense of all sentient life, in exchange for recognition of humanity's right to exist and reclaim a small portion of their former territory. Fear spread through consortium space as reports of the strange vessels continued to arrive from the outer systems. 3 more colonies went silent in the span of a week, with the same pattern as before: entire populations vanishing without a trace. Emergency sessions of the council stretched for days as representatives argued over the best response to this unknown threat. Commander Wright stood before the council, his face grim but determined. The senior members of his crew flanked him, each now fully recovered from their long stasis. "The Void Heralds are following the same pattern they used against humanity 20,000 years ago," he explained. "They start at the edges of populated space, consuming smaller settlements first, gathering biomass to fuel their expansion. If they follow the same strategy, they'll continue this pattern until they're strong enough for a coordinated strike against your core worlds." "How do we stop them?" asked Council Leader Thorne, setting aside the weeks of political maneuvering in the face of this existential threat. Wright gestured to Lieutenant Parker. "The Vanguard was specifically designed to combat the Heralds. Our weapons target the unique quantum signature of their biomechanical structures. With your permission, we propose 2 immediate actions. First, we'll complete the revival of our remaining crew. Second, we'll bring the Vanguard to full combat readiness and upgrade your defense systems with our technology." Counselor Vex, still suspicious of the humans' motives, spoke up. "And in return?" "Recognition of humanity's right to exist as a sovereign entity," Wright replied firmly. "And a small cluster of uninhabited systems where we can begin to rebuild. We were once billions spread across thousands of worlds. Now we are barely 200. We pose no threat to your consortium." After brief deliberation, the council accepted Wright's offer. The agreement was formalized through the efforts of diplomat Kelly Daniels, who had been assigned to work directly with the humans. Daniels, a young woman with a talent for cross-species communication, helped bridge 20,000 years of cultural differences. "The treaty is signed," she told Wright as they left the council chambers. "You and your people are now officially recognized as the human remnant, with all rights and protections of a consortium member species." Wright nodded solemnly. "Now comes the hard part: stopping the Heralds." Back at the Vanguard, the revival of the remaining crew members accelerated. Each day, more humans emerged from stasis, disoriented but determined once they understood their situation. Dr. Nelson worked tirelessly, personally overseeing each revival to ensure no complications. Lieutenant Parker led teams of consortium engineers, teaching them the principles behind human technology, while they helped restore the Vanguard systems. "Your energy conversion methods are efficient," she explained to a group of Solari technicians. "But they only operate in 3 dimensions. Our systems draw power from dimensional folding points, allowing us to harvest energy from multiple realities simultaneously." The Solari engineers were fascinated, quickly grasping concepts that would have seemed like magic to their ancestors. Similar scenes played out across the ship as humans shared their knowledge with consortium scientists. Security Chief Reed worked with consortium military leaders, analyzing the reports of Herald movements. "They're establishing a perimeter," she concluded after studying the pattern of attacked colonies, "creating a buffer zone free of life before they advance. Based on their current rate of expansion, we have perhaps 3 months before they reach heavily populated systems." Commander Wright divided his time between overseeing the Vanguard's restoration and strategic planning with consortium leaders. The ancient warship was gradually coming back to life, its systems humming with power that had lain dormant for 20 millennia. The main engines are now at 70% capacity, Parker reported one evening. Weapon systems at 65%. We've completed upgrades on 4 consortium defense stations using our targeting technology. It's not enough, Wright said, studying the tactical display showing Herald positions. We need more time, but time was the one resource they didn't have. 2 weeks later, the Heralds accelerated their advance, simultaneously attacking 12 colonies in a coordinated strike. Consortium defense fleets engaged them for the first time, and the results were devastating. Conventional weapons barely damaged the Herald vessels, while their strange energy weapons tore through consortium shields as if they weren't there. We can't wait any longer, Wright told his senior officers after receiving news of the battle. The Vanguard needs to join this fight now, ready or not. For the first time in 20,000 years, the great human warship powered up its main engines. The massive vessel rose from the ice plains of Keldis, its dark hull gleaming in the pale sunlight. Consortium engineers and scientists watched in awe as the ship that had been buried for millennia took to the stars once more. The Vanguard's crew was now up to 173 revived humans, still well below its optimal complement, but enough to operate essential systems. Commander Wright stood on the bridge, surrounded by his senior officers, as the ship accelerated toward the nearest engagement zone. All stations report ready, Commander, said Navigation Officer Reeves from his console. Approaching Herald positions in 17 minutes. Wright nodded, feeling the weight of history and responsibility. This is what we were preserved for, to finish what our ancestors started. The Vanguard dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Centauri Gateway, a vital junction point connecting 5 major consortium systems. A consortium defense fleet was already engaged with 3 Herald vessels, clearly losing the battle. Half the consortium ships were already drifting, dead in space. Target the lead Herald vessel, Wright ordered. Full tactical spread, graviton disruptors first, then quantum phase cannons. The Vanguard's weapons came to life, firing streams of energy unlike anything the consortium had ever seen. The lead Herald ship, a massive construct that resembled a twisted amalgamation of bone and metal, shuddered under the impact. Unlike the consortium weapons, the Vanguard's energy beams penetrated, the strange shields protecting the Herald vessel. Direct hit, reported Security Chief Reed. Their outer hull is breaching in multiple locations. Press the advantage, Wright commanded. All batteries, continuous fire. The battle that followed demonstrated why humanity had once been the dominant force in the galaxy. The Vanguard moved with impossible precision, its ancient weapons tearing through the Herald biomechs with devastating efficiency. Commander Wright coordinated with the remaining consortium ships, guiding them to target vulnerable points his sensors had identified. Within an hour, all 3 Herald vessels had been destroyed, reduced to drifting fragments in space. The consortium captains were stunned by the display of firepower. "One ship," murmured the Iraqi captain over the communications channel. "Your single vessel accomplished what our entire fleet could not." Wright was already focused on the next threat. "The Heralds will adapt quickly. They always do. We need to hit them harder and faster before they can evolve countermeasures to our weapons." The victory at the Centauri Gateway changed the dynamic of the conflict. The Consortium Council granted Wright temporary command authority over their defense forces, allowing him to coordinate a galaxy-wide response to the Herald incursion. Over the next month, the Vanguard led a series of strikes against Herald positions, systematically pushing them back toward the galactic rim. Lieutenant Parker worked with consortium engineers to retrofit their ships with simplified versions of human weapons technology, making them more effective against the Herald vessels. But the Heralds were indeed adapting. Each engagement became harder than the last as they evolved new defenses against human technology. During a particularly fierce battle in the Orion sector, the Vanguard itself sustained significant damage when a Herald ship detonated its power core rather than be captured. Decks 7 through 12 reporting heavy damage. Security Chief Reed announced as damage control teams rushed to contain the situation. "We've lost 30% of our starboard weapons array." Wright gripped the command chair as the ship shuddered around him. "Reroute power to remaining weapons. We can't let them gain a foothold in this system." The damaged Vanguard limped back to the nearest consortium repair station, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from several breached sections. Emergency teams worked frantically to stabilize the ship's systems, while medical staff treated the injured crew members. Commander Wright refused treatment for his own injuries until all his people were accounted for. Damage report, he requested as Lieutenant Parker entered the makeshift command center they had established in one of the intact sections of the ship. It's bad, sir, Parker admitted, her face streaked with soot and fatigue evident in her voice. The main power core is holding, but we've lost nearly 40% of our offensive capabilities. Shields are at minimal capacity. The worst damage is to the stellar forge. Wright's expression darkened at the mention of the forge. It was the Vanguard's most closely guarded secret, a system designed to harness stellar energy, to create weapons capable of permanently disrupting the quantum patterns that allowed the Void Heralds to exist. Can it be repaired? He asked. Parker hesitated. Yes, but not quickly. And not with consortium technology alone. We would need specific materials, some of which don't seem to exist anymore or are called by different names now. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Kelly Daniels, the consortium diplomat who had been working closely with the humans. Commander, the Council is requesting your presence at an emergency session, she said. The Heralds have changed their tactics. They're no longer attacking outlying colonies. They're gathering their forces for what appears to be a major assault on the Centauri Gateway. Wright nodded grimly. If they take the Gateway, they'll have access to 5 core systems simultaneously. We can't let that happen. Despite his injuries and the damaged state of his ship, Wright attended the Council session via holographic projection. The mood among the consortium leaders was grim. Reports from their scout ships confirmed that at least 30 Herald vessels were converging on the Gateway, far more than had been encountered in any previous engagement. Our combined fleets cannot stand against such a force, admitted Council leader Thorne. Not even with the upgraded weapons. Wright studied the tactical projections showing Herald movements. The Vanguard was designed for exactly this situation, he said finally. There's a system we haven't yet shared. With you, the Stellar Forge. It can create weapons that don't just destroy Herald ships but disrupt the quantum patterns that allow them to exist. Counselor Vex leaned forward. Why have you withheld this technology? Because it's dangerous, Wright replied honestly. The Forge manipulates energy at a fundamental level. Used improperly, it could destabilize an entire star system. But right now it's damaged. Lieutenant Parker believes she can repair it, but we need time and specific resources. After intense debate, the Council agreed to provide everything the humans needed. For the next 2 weeks, consortium and human engineers worked side by side in a desperate race against time. The Vanguard's other systems were repaired enough to make the ship combat-worthy. But everyone knew the real key to victory lay in the Stellar Forge. Finally, just 3 days before the predicted Herald assault, Parker reported success. The Forge is operational, Commander. Not at full capacity, but enough for what we need. The combined consortium defense fleet with the Vanguard at its center took position at the Centauri Gateway. 212 ships formed a defensive perimeter around the critical jump point, the largest gathering of military vessels in 20,000 years. On the Vanguard's bridge, Commander Wright addressed his crew and the captains of the consortium vessels. The Heralds consume life to fuel their growth. 20,000 years ago, they nearly wiped out humanity. Today, they threaten all sentient life in this galaxy. We were preserved for this moment, to finish what our ancestors started. The Herald fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel exactly as predicted. 37 massive biomechanical constructs arrayed in an attack formation. They were larger than before, having consumed the resources of dozens of worlds during their advance. They've evolved again, observed Security Chief Reed from her tactical station. New configuration to their outer hulls. Our previous targeting data may not be as effective. Wright nodded. We expected this. Implement targeting plan Delta. Focus fire on their lead vessels. The battle began with an exchange of long-range weapons fire. The upgraded consortium ships performed better than in previous encounters, but the Heralds had indeed adapted. Their new hull configurations deflected much of the energy from the human-designed weapons. They're breaking through Sector 7, reported Navigation Officer Reeves as 3 Herald ships pushed through the defensive line. Bring us about, Wright ordered. Intercept course. The Vanguard moved with surprising speed for such a massive vessel, positioning itself between the advancing Herald ships and the gateway. Its remaining weapons blazed, slowing but not stopping the Herald advance. "We need the forge," Wright said to Parker. "Now." Parker's hands flew across her console. Initiating stellar forge sequence, drawing energy from the nearby star now. The Vanguard began to glow with strange shifting light as it channeled enormous amounts of energy through systems that had not been used in 20 millennia. Warnings flashed across multiple consoles as power levels rose beyond safe parameters. "Forge at 60% capacity," Parker announced, her voice tight with concentration. 70%, 80. "Target the lead Herald vessel," Wright commanded. "Full discharge." A beam of pure white energy lanced out from the Vanguard, connecting with the nearest Herald ship. Unlike conventional weapons, this beam seemed to pass through the Herald's defenses without resistance. Where it touched, the biomechanical material simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but erased from reality itself. "Direct hit," Reed confirmed. "Herald vessel completely neutralized." "Recharge the forge," Wright ordered. "Target the next ship." The battle continued for hours, with the Vanguard systematically targeting Herald vessels with the forge, while consortium ships provided defensive cover. One by one, the Herald ships were erased from existence. Their strange matter returned to the quantum void from which it had emerged. But the continuous use of the stellar forge was taking its toll on the Vanguard. Power fluctuations cascaded through the ship as systems never designed to operate for such extended periods began to fail. "Forge energy containment at critical levels," Parker warned. "If we fire again, we risk a catastrophic overload." Wright looked at the tactical display. 3 Herald ships remained, including their command vessel, a massive construct twice the size of the others. "We need to end this now," he decided. "Prepare for direct intervention. I'll lead the boarding party myself." Despite protests from his officers, Wright assembled a team of 20 human soldiers equipped with portable versions of their quantum disruption technology. Using the Vanguard's remaining maneuvering capability, they brought the ship alongside the Herald command vessel. "Once we're aboard, we'll locate their central node and plant the disruptor device," Wright explained to his team. "If we succeed, it should cascade through their entire command structure." The boarding action was unlike any conventional military operation. The interior of the Herald vessel was a nightmarish landscape of organic and mechanical components that seemed to shift and change as they moved through it. The human team fought their way through bizarre defenses, losing 6 of their number before reaching the central chamber. There, they found the truth about the Void Heralds, not a species as they had believed, but a self-replicating artificial intelligence that had evolved to consume organic matter, turning life itself into computation material. At its core was a pulsing crystalline structure that served as its primary consciousness. Wright placed the disruptor device directly against this crystal. "For humanity," he said simply as he activated it. The reaction was immediate and violent. Quantum energy coursed through the Herald vessel, disrupting the patterns that allowed its impossible biology to function. Wright and his team barely escaped as the command ship began to disintegrate around them. The destruction of the command vessel had the desired effect on the remaining Herald ships. Without the guiding intelligence, they became disorganized and vulnerable, quickly dispatched by the combined consortium fleet. The victory came at great cost. The Vanguard sustained critical damage during the final phase of the battle, with multiple systems beyond repair. Commander Wright himself was severely injured during the boarding action, requiring extensive medical treatment. In the aftermath, the surviving humans faced a decision: remain isolated, clinging to the remnants of their past, or integrate into the new galactic society while preserving their heritage. Under the leadership of Lieutenant Commander Ryan Phillips, who took command while Wright recovered, they chose a middle path. The humans established a colony on an unclaimed world, naming it New Terra. Using genetic material preserved in the Vanguard's databanks, they began the slow process of rebuilding their population. The ship itself became both monument and university, where the technological knowledge of ancient humanity was carefully shared with the consortium species. 25 years after its discovery, the repaired Vanguard made its final journey,